When we hear the term firstborn, our thoughts follow a similar line. An obvious line, an understandable line. The word firstborn means the one who was born first. This rings true for humans, animals, and even those beings above or below us. There's no other meaning to this word, but what if this were a title? What if it wasn't the firstborn, but the firstborn with a capital F? How would that work? And who would be deserving of that kind of title? Clive Barker's Jericho is the home of the boss villain, the Firstborn, a being that the entire game revolves around. It combines multiple elements from the author's horror novels and thrillers. The Firstborn is one of them. He is, in a literal way, considered the Antichrist. But who are they? What is their purpose? And where did he come from? Sit back and listen, and we'll take you on a journey that would make even the most devout Christians wonder what their beliefs are really worth. Before we get into this explanation, though, we do have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What is Clive Barker's Jericho? First off, let me give you some context about the game. Clive Barker's Jericho is a horror-themed first-person shooter game. Yeah, that's right, somewhere between Call of Duty and Bloodborne. It's a squad-based game with a twist, and you get the choice of playing a roster of 6 characters. Similar to an Otome game, the basic storyline is the same, while the route you go through varies depending on the character you play. For example, if you play a priest, you're better off staying away from the battle because you'd have low HP, but if you play as a tank, you'd have the highest health out of the party, specifically in close combat, but maybe not as much luck while choosing weapons. Every character has their own pros and cons. The enemies in this game are monsters or otherworldly creatures from Clive Barker's works. For those of you who aren't familiar, Clive Barker is a writer, filmmaker, and visual artist who made his super successful debut into the horror genre with his short stories, Books of Blood. Check those out because we really love them, but coming back to the game, you've got your usual selection of weapons like assault rifles, miniguns, and pistols. However, the twist here isn't the weapons, but what they weaponize. Unlike other games, each character has spells that resonate with their character. These include summoning fire demons, slowing down time, guiding bullets, and leeching off enemy lifespans to add to your own. Honestly, we'd stay far away from that last one. We'd rather die to our own weapon than be used as fodder for someone else's lifespan. That's just messing with the natural order, but this entire game is based on that mess, so we're not complaining that much. The game spans 5 time periods and eras that are extremely crucial to the backstory and the flow of the game. They are Alkali, World War II in 1942, the Crusades in 1213, the Roman province in 30 AD, and Sumeria in 3000 BC. Recognize any of those? Probably some biblical events? But we'll touch on that in a little bit. Some examples of the kind of monsters you might encounter are flying cultists, machine gunners, flamethrowers, grenadiers, and legionnaires. After all this, you reach the final boss, which is the main topic of this video, the Firstborn. Who is he? Well, the Firstborn is, in a quite literal sense, the first being to be born on Earth. You can think of it as God's first attempt at creating something in its own image. The Firstborn was neither male nor female, from neither the dark nor the light, a being that was both beautiful and terrible to behold. Seeing its power, God wasn't happy. In fact, he was disturbed by the power coming from the Firstborn, so he pretty much pulled a Hera and threw it away. Okay, not that bad, but he did banish him to a pretty little patch of reality called the Pixis Prima, then restarted his efforts to make Adam and Eve. We'll talk about the Pixis Prima later, but it is important, so try to keep it in mind. Regardless, that little period of time that the Firstborn was on Earth, it left a mark. To quote the game's information page, it left a taint so powerful that even God's expulsion couldn't stop it from breaking through the mortal world. Why would the Firstborn want to break through? Well, pretty much because it was wronged. It wanted to claim its birthright, the right to roam Earth without consequence. It was pretty much enraged during its confinement in the Pixis, waiting there for millennia to return. There was even a prophecy made about it. It states, "The Firstborn will break through into our world several times. With each appearance, it will ride disease, corruption, and perversity like an all-consuming wave until 7 mystics sacrifice themselves to drive it back into the abyss." Yeah, real tempting. Kind of like a reverse Minotaur situation, actually, minus the revenge part. Look it up if you don't believe us, but we mentioned the 5 eras earlier, right? The first first one on that list was Al-Khali, and the only one that didn't have a timestamp or a year. That's because that place is relevant to the Firstborn to this day. Why? Because the Pixis Prima, the pretty little patch of reality that it was banished into, that chasm is located in the ruins of the last ever Middle Eastern city, and that city is called Al-Khali. The issue of the Firstborn's existence is being dealt with by a government agency called the Department of Occult Warfare, known as DOW for short. As the prophecy stated, it had broken into reality 6 times so far. How? Through breaches, which are portals that distort space and time to allow for those outside reality to make their way to Earth. The prophecy also says this would be the last time. The DOW sent mystics after them every single time and has lost 7 Sumerian priests so far. This group of mystics is what we know in the current time as the Jericho team and the protagonists of the game. During the Roman era part of the game, you find a centurion physically crucified in the freezing weather. Through a possession, he tells the Jericho team that the Firstborn didn't want freedom, but what it was denied when God created Adam and Eve. In his words, freedom is the absence of chains, just as evil is the absence of love. Conclusion? The Firstborn didn't want to be feared or worshipped for its power, but loved and respected. I mean, fair enough, right? The final Jericho team managed to bring it to the brink of destruction before Arnold angrily lunged at the Firstborn and carried it into a pure tunnel of light. Was it destroyed? Maybe. We don't know, but the priority at the moment was to escape. That was it. What does he look like? All right, we should have established this. Well, it's called the Child. It looks like a seemingly innocent black/greenish-gray humanoid child with white eyes. Its voice, however, is ethereal, and by God, I don't mean this in the beautiful, serene goddess way. I mean eerie voices in the middle of the night burn the place to the ground way. Its voice was a distorted mix of male and female, young and old, all those voices speaking at once. Creepy when you hear it. It sure gave me the chills when I first did. But wait, we forgot again. Arnold. How could we forget Arnold? In order to get a full picture of the kind of havoc that brought this in the first place, you need to learn about Arnold Leech and the Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture. Arnold Leech. Arnold Leech was a high-ranking DOW general. He was recruited into the DOW in 1962 as an invoker. However, there was a teeny-tiny problem. That problem was his obsession with the arcane and the ancient gods. Add in the information he was getting through the DOW, and he was pretty much a danger to not just himself, but to the entire department, and soon enough, the world. So he was expelled from his position. What he didn't know was that the department had authorized his elimination. That's right, permanent elimination, aka assassination, as if the Jericho team didn't have enough on their hands at the moment. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say assassination? No, not quite. That's what it was supposed to be, but that's not how it went. In fact, that supposed assassination turned into a goddamn slaughter. Leech, most probably, found out about the permanent elimination and with his arcane knowledge managed to open not 1, not 2, but several breaches throughout a shopping center in Dallas. This managed to kill hundreds of civilians and several Jericho operatives were killed before the situation was under control. After that attack, among the hundreds of casualties, Jericho operatives were under the assumption that Leech was finally dead. That is, until the Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture. Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture. What is the Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture? To put it all in one line, it's an apocalyptic terrorist cult that worshipped the Firstborn. Who had started this, you might ask? Why, our very own dead general, Arnold Leech. You thought he was dead? Well, turns out he was sucked into the very breach he opened, where he was contacted by the Firstborn himself and was taken in as his direct apprentice. And this madman, having successfully fulfilled his dream of being contacted by the ancient gods, agreed readily and came back to found and run this cult. Imagine the kind of havoc that MCU villains created on Earth before the Avengers could step in. Literally world-shattering stuff. Now take that damage, add in the moral damage and unreasonable charges, and increase it by a factor of 10. And that's kind of what this cult was doing. They were performing heinous attacks across the world on a global scale. Gas attacks on Sydney? Blame them. Grisly murders in the name of rituals in Baltimore? They're responsible. Vicious attacks against school children and babies? God, yes, they're the reason behind it. I mean, seriously, leave the kids alone. What did they even do? None of this even made sense. What was the reason behind these attacks? Why kill so many people? Karma. You've heard karma coming to bite people in the butts. Well, they were planning on weaponizing karma moment to get what they wanted. Don't get it? Okay, let me explain. You know how there are people who make you cry because they like seeing you cry? Or those people who like seeing people sad, mad, upset, the whole 9 yards? Yeah, this is pretty much them. The Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture's main goal was to build up and store enough negative charges and energy around the world to release it all at once. What for? To summon the Firstborn, of course. Why do cults do anything nowadays? Come on. They want to take over the world with the cult or get a piece of power while they take over the world with the cult. I mean, honestly. The Brotherhood had called this a karma bomb and was going to release it into the air and, in turn, summon the Firstborn. However, something happened, resulting in some kind of betrayal by the Firstborn to the Brotherhood. Surrounded by chaos and tragedy, adding to the inner turmoil they were in by their patron's betrayal, they turned against each other. They tortured each other and, in turn, tortured themselves before committing group suicide. Leech, the last one surviving, released the karma bomb before dying himself, adding the entire Brotherhood's death to the charges to create another breach. The surprising part of this, however, was that not even this was enough to bring the Firstborn to Earth. However, it did teleport the entire Brotherhood to Al-Kali, their main headquarters, reviving them into undead corpses and monsters, the enemies you fight in the game. You didn't forget this was all the story of a game, did you? Extra tidbits! Now, let's give you some extra tidbits because, well, why not? The reanimated corpses of the Brotherhood were dubbed as cultists, and you had 3 types of those. There were cultists, flying cultists, and explosive cultists. Cultists had launching hoods and were bloodthirsty little buggers. Explosive cultists were biological suicide bombers equipped with yellow pustules that exploded on contact. Arnold was one of these, and you could shoot them down the same way you'd shoot down a flying dinosaur. Speaking of Arnold, we forgot to add, when they were reanimated in Al-Kali, they were taken back in time to the 13th century when the Crusades were happening. Using their features, he posed as the Archangel Gabriel, or Seraphim Gabriel for you religious students out there, fooling the Templar Knights, calling the rest of the Brotherhood God's angels. This could be said to be around the time when the Mad Bishop Malthius St. Clair had led ill-fated child soldiers to their doom in Al-Kali. They had managed to fool the Templar Knights into truly believing that they were seraphic angels and not demons serving the Firstborn. How to defeat the Firstborn. So this is an enemy in a game after all. How do you defeat him? Well, with the powers of you and your teammates, of course. At the climax of the game, you and your teammates would find an underwater cave which you'd have to swim under to find the Pyxis Prima, the chasm that the Firstborn calls home. During that initial meeting, in a fit of rage, the Firstborn would permanently kill off 2 of your teammates. Then the fighting began. A couple of things you need to keep in mind are that weapons are useless and it's able to copy the powers of your teammates. So you beat it at its own game. Use the powers it's stealing to knock him dead and keep it away from the water cave. First, it would use telekinesis to try and throw you against the wall. Switch to Abby, that's something you can do throughout the game, don't worry, and use that power to shove him away from the cave. It wouldn't realize it at first, but don't take any chances. Next move, health draining magic. You'll see purple orbs around you and your party. This magic allows him to leech off of your health and deprive you of time. Switch to Rawlings and use Vlad's curse to knock him out. The Firstborn also has a little demon of his own that it plans to use during the fight. It does use it while fighting Delgado. You switch over to him and summon Abba Benili. Remember the fire demon we mentioned in the beginning? Yeah, that's him. You can sit back and watch this fight for a little bit. In a desperate move, the Firstborn will cast a blood ward on everyone but Billy Church. Maybe because she's the one who has the power, we're not sure. Either way, you switch to her and cast your own blood ward. The moment you break the ward it placed, you switch back to your character and move in for the kill. You'll get in a couple of good hits before Arnold, having had enough, flies over and grabs the Firstborn, then barrels through a tunnel of pure light. Do you follow? Hell no. That tunnel gets brighter and brighter, and you've already lost 2 teammates to his craziness. You don't need to lose yourself and the rest of your team to his death as well. You round up the rest of your team and make your escape the way you came in, the water cave. You swim down, 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 ignoring the skulls and bodies you find on the way. Nothing's important anymore except your own survival. Once you're out, it's done. He's gone. Or is he? Either way, that's not your problem anymore. Marvelous verdict! Out of all the cultish things we read, write, watch, and see online, this one might just take the cake. No one's really thought of weaponizing karma of all things. This entire game is something out of a horror novel, and honestly, we love it. Clive Barker did a really good job with everything, and boy, we'll have nightmares if we play this game again. Doesn't mean we won't, though. Anyways, what's the most messed up cult story you've got? We'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. We're always looking for new ideas for videos. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.